This lesson is New Features in Dreamweaver CC. In this lesson, you'll take a quick tour of some of the new features introduced in the latest version of the program. Specifically, you'll take a look at the CSS Designer panel, Adobe Edge web fonts, and the new jQuery UI widgets. So the three new features that you're about to take a look at are perhaps the most notable features in Dreamweaver, although there are other features as well. As part of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite of products, Dreamweaver CC allows you to sync and store your preferences in the Creative Cloud, and this allows you to move your projects from one computer to another, working with different installations of Dreamweaver while retaining your preferences. You can also store your files in the Creative Cloud using the 20 gigabytes of free storage provided with your cloud subscription, so that you always have access to your files and assets. Dreamweaver CC also improves upon the HTML5 and CS3 support built in previous versions. For instance, using the new Insert panel, you can add HTML5 semantic elements such as header, navigation, aside, article, section, and footer. The new media category of the Insert panel allows you to add HTML5 video, audio, and Edge Animate compositions. This new integration with Adobe Edge Animate allows you to add plugin-free animation and interactivity into your website using HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. And finally, the form category of the Insert panel has also been improved to include the new HTML5 form elements such as email, password, URL, telephone, search, and number, along with a host of other HTML5 form elements that you can add to your pages. So as you can see, there's a number of improvements in Dreamweaver CC. But let's go ahead and take a look at those three new features that we mentioned earlier. Specifically, the CSS Designer panel, Adobe Edge web fonts, and the jQuery UI widgets. So let's go ahead and take a look at the CSS Designer. First, I'm going to switch from the compact workspace to the expanded workspace, which will allow me to see the CSS Designer in two-column layout mode. Next, I'm going to minimize the Insert panel by double-clicking it. As you can see, the CSS Designer panel has four sections. The Sources pane is where you can view all of the CSS sources that are contributing to the styling of your documents. From here, I can see that I'm using styles.css, or I can add new sources, such as creating a new CSS file, attaching an existing file, or defining an embedded style sheet within the page. The Media pane allows you to create and work with media queries so that you can create multiple layouts for tablet, mobile, and desktop views. The Selectors pane is where you will see the selectors defined in your various CSS sources. For example, if I click on Styles CSS in my Sources pane, I can see that the selectors defined in that style sheet include body, container, navigation, main, sidebar, etc. The Properties pane will show the properties set for that specific CSS selector or style rule. For instance, clicking on Container and then setting the Show Set checkbox, I can see that the layout of my container is 960 pixels wide, with left and right margins set to auto, and the container set to position relative. Additionally, my container has a background color set to white, a background image, and the background repeat set to repeat Y. As you can see, this Properties pane now provides a visual interface to working with your CSS properties. This is an improvement over the previous versions of Dreamweaver, where you were only able to look at and set your properties in the form of a text list. If I clear the Show Set checkbox, I can now view all of the properties that are available to set for my container. The Properties pane includes 5 buttons, which will allow me to filter the properties for specific categories. For example, the Layout control allows me to set properties such as width and height, as well as work with margins, padding, and positioning. Working with the margin and padding controls in this new visual interface provides me with a more intuitive manner of setting my margins. For example, if I want to set the top margin, I simply go to the top of the margin control, Click the Set Top Margin drop-down box, choose Pixel, and set the value to 0. Similarly, the padding control allows me to set either the top, bottom, left, or right padding settings individually, or I can click the Link button in the middle to link all 4 properties together and set the padding for all 4 at the same time to, say, 5 pixels. The second button in the Properties navigation bar is the Text button. Here you'll find all of the various text properties that can be set. For example, color, font family, font style, alignment, and decoration. The text area also includes support for the new CSS3 text shadow properties. The third button in the Property navigation bar is the Border button. This allows me to view the various border properties. From here, I can set the various border properties such as border color, width, and style. Support for the CSS3 border radius property has also been added to the CSS Designer panel, where I now have a new border radius visual control. As with the border padding and margin controls, I can lock the 4 values for my corners, or I can set an individual border radius. The fourth button in the navigation bar allows me to view the background properties. From here I can set properties such as the background color, the background image, and the background repeat settings. Another new CSS3 feature added to the CSS Designer is the gradient control. From the gradient control, I can now create a CSS3 gradient with multiple color stops. For instance, if I set this bottom color to a green, I can then click in the middle and set this color to a darker green. You can even adjust the angle and the opacity of your gradient. Once you've adjusted the settings to your liking, simply press Enter or Return, and the new linear gradient will be defined. The final button exposes the other CSS style properties. For example, list style position, list style type, and list style image. So as you can see, Dreamweaver CC has made it much easier and more intuitive to work with and set your various CSS styles and properties. Next, we'll take a look at the improvements in how Dreamweaver CC handles web fonts, specifically the integration with Adobe Edge web fonts from the Creative Cloud suite. Here we have a simple page with a number of paragraphs styled using the web-safe font stacks provided in Dreamweaver. To work with web fonts, we can go to the Modify, Manage Fonts menu option and bring up the Manage Fonts dialog box. The Manage Fonts dialog box now includes a tab for the Adobe Edge web fonts. Adobe Edge web fonts give you access to a library of web fonts made possible by contributions from Adobe, Google, and designers around the world. The fonts are served by Typekit and free for use on your website. Using the new Adobe Edge web fonts tab, I can choose from a variety of web fonts available. To add Adobe Edge web fonts to your site, you can simply scroll through the list and choose the fonts you're interested in, for example, Acme and Alerta, or you can search for a font by name, for example, Bubblegum. Once we've selected the 3 fonts we're interested in, we can click Done, and then we can apply these fonts to our web page. To do that, we'll select the last paragraph, and using the CSS Designer, I'll choose my embedded style sheet and create a new selector for a custom class. Then from the text properties, I can choose the font family where my web fonts are now accessible. So let's choose Acme. Next, you can select the paragraph and apply the custom class from the Properties Inspector. Finally, to view the selected font, you'll need to go into Live View or view the page in a browser. Once in Live View, we can see that our new style is applied. So with the addition of support for Adobe Edge web fonts, you now have a wealth of options available for styling your text. The last new feature we'll take a look at is the introduction of the new jQuery UI widgets. Here we have the completed version of one of our exercise files incorporating some of these jQuery UI widgets. Dreamweaver makes it easy to add these new jQuery UI widgets through the jQuery UI category of the Insert panel. From here you have access to inserting the accordion and tabs controls, as well as other controls such as date picker and progress bar. This page incorporates both the accordion and the tab control. To customize the tab control, you simply click on the outside border of the tab control to select it, which exposes the various properties in the Property Inspector. Using the Property Inspector, I can add or delete panels, or reposition them using the up and down arrows. Each panel allows you to add new content, optimizing screen space. To change the content of each tab, simply hover over the tab and click the eye icon. Then you can select and modify and adjust the content as you would in other sections of your web page. The new accordion control works in much the same way. Click on the outside edge of the accordion control to expose the properties in the Property Inspector, where from here you can also add or remove panels and reorder them. Each panel you add can then expand or contract, allowing you to take advantage of limited screen real estate. Like the tab control, to adjust the content of each tab, you can either hover over the tab and click the eyeball icon, or you can choose the panel from the Property Inspector. So as you can see, using these new jQuery UI widgets provides you with another option for adding interactivity to your website. When using these jQuery widgets, you're actually using JavaScript, HTML5, and CSS3, which Dreamweaver is adding for you as you add each control to your page. So that's just a look at some of the new features in Dreamweaver CC, including the CSS Designer panel, Adobe Edge Web Fonts, and jQuery UI widget. This lesson has been New Features in Dreamweaver CC.